let's talk about final exams. Tonight's topic is all about how to get prepared for your finals. What's your usual approach? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you wondering where to begin? Are you just sitting here trying to figure out how you're going to condense all that information? If that's the case, tonight is for you. So I'm going to walk you through 5 steps that you can take as you're preparing for your final exams. So whether that means that your finals are in 3 days or next week or a couple weeks from now, doesn't matter if you use these steps. Okay, so and as I'm speaking, if you have questions about what I've shared, put them in the comments below and I would be happy to answer them for you. All right, so let's talk about step number 1. You're going to schedule your study times. That's really, really important. So you want to get your calendar out. Again, it doesn't matter whether you have days or weeks to study for these finals. The point is you're going to take the time that you have and you're going to schedule it. So on your calendar, you're going to write down which topics you're covering on which days and be very specific, trying to encompass all of the topics that you've learned for that class. You know, that can feel a little overwhelming at first, but once you start writing it down, you can see very quickly whether you've captured everything or not. So the idea is you want to be able to review everything you've learned up to this point. And the amount of time that you spend on each of those topics might differ. So you might spend more time on a particular topic than another, but either way, you're going to cover all of the topics by scheduling very specifically in your calendar when you're going to review those. Okay, so and be realistic with yourself. So the idea of studying for 8 hours or 5 hours might not be realistic. If you're not someone who normally studies for that long, you're not going to become someone suddenly that can sit in a chair for hours and hours and study. So be realistic with how you schedule your study times. It's always better to put it into chunks if possible. So even a 30-minute chunk or a 60-minute chunk. If you're feeling really stressed, you might be able to push through and do a little bit longer, but I wouldn't try to do more than 90 minutes at a time because it's just really hard to stay focused on what you're studying and what you're reviewing. So you're going to do this as often as you can before finals because you are doing this for different classes at the same time. So you might find that you've got 3 or 4 times spread out over the week where you are reviewing for one class, and then you have 3 or 4 times spread out over the week for a different class, and that's okay. Okay, step number 2. So once you've scheduled everything out and you've done it specifically, what chapter, what topic you're reviewing, the second thing is you want to start with the topics that have showed up on previous exams. So in the same way that when you took an exam, you didn't see everything that you talked about in class on that exam. You didn't see everything written in the chapter on that exam. You saw certain select topics that your professor felt was really important to test you on. So what you'll find on the final exam is it generally repeats the topics that you've already been tested on if it's a cumulative exam. So you're going to see the same topics that were on your unit exam, you're going to see those on the final exam. Now, almost all the time, it's not the same question, but it is the same topic. And so that's a really good clue of what you're going to see on the final exam. So you might get your notes out, get your concept maps out, and be looking at those and highlighting with a highlighter. Oh, okay, I remember we had a question on that on the second test. I'm going to highlight this. So going through and highlighting the topics that have already been tested on in previous exams is going to give you a great place to zero in for your studying for your final exam. Okay, so step number 3 is to prioritize your weakest topics. So again, you've already highlighted previously tested topics on your notes, your PowerPoints, your concept maps. So now you want to prioritize reviewing your weakest topics. reviewing those topics that you missed on those exams, because those same topics are going to show up on the final, and this is a second opportunity for you to be able to do well on those questions. So prioritize the weakest topics first, and then move on to the rest of the topics. By scheduling all of your studying, that's how you'll make sure that you're not just reviewing only the weaker topics, but in the end, you would have reviewed all of the topics, which is also important for your final. Okay, so step number 4, as you're studying, I want you to talk through the topics out loud. So you're going to talk them through out loud. Talk through your notes out loud, talk through your concept maps out loud, and really get used to not only seeing the information and thinking about the information, but also hearing the information that you're learning and really having to think and process that. So talk through those topics out loud, explain them to yourself. You may already do this, and that's fantastic. So you know exactly what I mean. You're going to talk through the things that you're reviewing. But if you're not someone that normally talks out loud, this is going to be new for you, and it might feel a little awkward or strange in the beginning, but it's really helpful for helping your brain to emphasize that information and to be able to retain it and recall it for your final. So really practice speaking out loud the things that you're reviewing. That's going to be a really important way for you to recall the information later. Okay, your last step, step number 5, is all about sleep. So you cannot go without sleep these last couple of weeks. You have to be sleeping. So don't sabotage yourself by staying up late. Don't do it multiple nights in a row. It's okay if you have periodically a study session that runs late, you're in a groove, that's fine. But if you're staying up late night after night in preparation for your finals, you're going to be exhausted. It's going to catch up with you. You're going to feel more overwhelmed, more emotional. It's harder to think clearly if you're exhausted. So I would caution you that for every night that you stay up a little bit later, that the next night you try to go to bed at a better time, and just not that you can catch up on sleep, but at least you can keep yourself from getting to a point of exhaustion, which is really important. And really, one final note about that is that you don't want to stay up all night or get up super early the day of your final. That last bit of rest is so important, because when you are sitting there taking those exam questions, you're going to need all of the energy and all of the thinking ability that you have. And if you're exhausted, you're going to be more likely to be distracted, and you're going to be more likely to become overwhelmed. And so really protect that time the night before your final. And I know it's hard to do, but give yourself this quota. I have to get this much sleep. I know that I do best if I have 6 hours of sleep, or 5 hours of sleep, or in an ideal world, 8 hours of sleep. Whatever that number is where you know you can perform your best, that's what you want to shoot for the night before. Okay, so just as a review, our 5 steps. Step 1 is going to be to schedule your study time. You're going to do it very specifically, what topics and when. Step number 2 is to start with topics that have showed up on previous exams, because if they were important enough to be on your unit test, you will see them again on the final. Maybe not the same questions, but the same topics. Step number 3 is to prioritize your weakest topics first. So really prioritizing those weakest topics. Maybe they were questions that you missed on previous exams and things that you just need to review so you can have some confidence going forward for the final. But then by scheduling, that's how you're able to review all the other topics, which are also important. Okay, and step 4, you're going to talk through those course topics out loud. You're going to talk through that review out loud. You're talking through your concept maps, you're talking through your notes, and you're really hearing yourself explain the information. That's a great way to reinforce the things that you've learned and to help you recall them on the final. And then the fifth step is all about sleep. You have to make sure you prioritize sleep so that you can be retaining the information that you're reviewing, and so that you don't reach a point of exhaustion, so that you don't hit a wall where you get emotional and then you're stressed out and then you're not able to think clearly. And especially the night before the final. So really protecting that time, setting a quota for yourself, and making sure that you get the sleep you need to perform your best. So those were the 5 steps for preparing for your finals. And I'm just curious, I want to know, which step are you excited about? Which one do you feel like could make the biggest difference for you? I'd love for you to put that in the comments below and let me know. And again, if you're in nursing school and you're struggling, I'd love for you to check out my free workshop on how to study to get A's in nursing school. So that's it for tonight. I'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.